We can put these parts in two different baskets, so to speak. In one basket, let's write fear on the outside, anger, jealousy, resentment, superiority, inferiority. And on the other basket, let's write love on the outside. All of those experiences come from the love basket. And as you apply emotional awareness, you know, because you hurt and you're thinking critical thoughts, or it is this frightened part, or you feel wonderful and you're thinking loving, content, patient, grateful thoughts. You know, this is the answer to your question. You know whether you're in a frightened part of your personality or a loving part of your personality. And this is what the new consciousness allows us to see and use.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Gary Zukav with us on the show today. Gary's a renowned author and spiritual teacher whose work has touched millions. With 4 New York Times bestsellers and more than 30 appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show, he's a master at translating complex spiritual and quantum physics concepts into clear, practical language. I've been a huge fan of Gary's for over 35 years, and I'm eager to ask him how we can tap into our own authentic power and how doing so can transform both our spiritual paths and everyday lives. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with Gary. Gary, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled you could join us today. Thank you for making time for all of us.
You're welcome, Julie. It's a joy to be talking with you.
I have been a fan for decades, and in preparing for our chat today, I went to my bookshelf and look what I found. This is 35 years old, Gary. It is Gently Loved. I think I read it at the beach, reread it at the beach. It's got suntan lotion or something on it. It smells like copper tone, even 30 years later. And the other thing, Seat of the Soul, which is that's one of my favorite all-time books ever. And you're going to love this. I found a drawing that my son did when he was 3. And I thought, how perfect is this? The drawing is of Moses, and Moses with his 10 commandments. But look at the top. He's got angels above it and the hand of God. And the hand of God looks like an oven mitt. Is that hilarious?
Yes, it's beautiful.
He drew that when he was 3. And when I got this book off my shelf yesterday, when I was preparing for our chat, I found this inside the book. And I thought, how perfect is this? Because you're a modern day Moses. The information that you share with us and how you've affected millions, kabillions of lives, I consider you to be a modern day Moses.
Well, thank you. But Moses, from what I know of him, delivered a set of commandments, not suggestions, said, do this and
Right.
don't not do it, or there's severe consequences. This is not that.
I know, but as far as influence,
I appreciate that, Julie. I do. I love sharing a window through which I've come to see life, and I hope it will be helpful to you.
Yeah. Well, I just thought that was the cutest thing ever, that I found that drawing in my book that I've had for so long. You have certainly lived an interesting life, sir. Graduated from Harvard, became a Green Beret in the U.S. Army Special Forces, hung out with what you coined hippie physicists. I love that. Lived a monk-like existence, and then became one of the most influential, well-respected spirituality teachers on the planet. That's my opinion. Sorry you're such an underachiever, first of all. Secondly, when did you realize that you were being led to do this work? Did you just have a light bulb go off one day in your head? I mean, what was there something that was a catalyst? How did it all evolve?
Slowly. It's a You forgot to mention that I was addicted to sex through the first half of my life.
Okay, well, you can talk about that. Thank you.
It was all of that is part of everyone's path through the Earth School is unique, and no one's is more valuable than another. There's no one more precious or less precious than you in the universe. So, uh, seeing someone's biography can inspire in you to see the beauty of your own uniqueness and how you can use that because it's designed, well, moment by moment. Do you know who designed it?
We did,
You did.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every experience that you have in the Earth School is a karmic necessity. Karma means that you experience what you have caused others to experience through your intentions and the intentions behind your actions and words. So, to five sensory humans, we might say that the guidance that the teacher, Christ, gave, I think it was Christ, said, do to your neighbor what you want your neighbor to do to you. Now we're multisensory. Christ said that to a five sensory species. Now it's changed a little bit. Intend for your neighbor what you want your neighbor to intend for you. That's the golden rule. So I was in San Francisco riding a motorcycle, leather jacket, experimenting with some light drugs like marijuana and LSD. When I got invited to a meeting of physicists at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory. And I decided to go because I never studied physics or mathematics. I was a liberal arts major, and I wanted to see what they were like. It was a Friday afternoon meeting, and the physicist who brought it together was a wonderful woman, rotund, jolly. Her name was Elizabeth Rauscher. I love her. And she allowed me to come to the meeting. And at this meeting, the physicists there were asking the question, are we experimenting with the reality? Are we creating the reality that we're experimenting with? And that was exactly the question that I and my group of arrogant, young, white males were discussing in the coffee shops in North Beach where I was living. Except this was not a coffee shop conversation. These were some of the most respected theoretical physicists. And I was so excited. I couldn't explain what excited me when I got home. I felt like I'd had 3 cups of cappuccino. Sparks were coming off my fingertips, but I couldn't say why. So I asked Elizabeth if I could come back the next Friday, and she said, yes. Oh, and so I began to I started reading books. I went to used bookstores. I didn't have the money for new bookstores. And slowly I began to get a grasp of some of the things, like Niels Bohr's complementarity, Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, Erwin Schrödinger's cat paradox. And as I got familiar with some of these things, I wanted to share it. I went to a meeting of physics and consciousness at Esalen, which is a retreat center in California. And there I met a physicist. Actually, he was a Tai Chi master who studied physics at the National Taiwan University. And he gave me the brilliant, creative framework for this book that I knew at that moment I wanted to write, called The Dancing Wooly Masters, about quantum physics, but without mathematics because I didn't know any, and written for people like me. That was my first gift to life. Before that, everything was for me, for me, for me, for me. And as I was writing this book, I asked the physicists there if they would help me, and they all said yes, almost all of them. And I began writing, and with each chapter, I would create an outline. But almost immediately, the outline that I created became uninteresting to me. It was um, replaced by my excitement at another thought that swept away the outline. So I always started writing about the new thought,
Mhm.
and I would follow it to the end, and then the chapter would come to an end. I didn't know that chapters came to an end by themselves, but they do. At least these did. And I was in the process of doing this once, creating and explaining something about quantum physics that I was just beginning to understand, when I realized I didn't have the thought. It didn't occur to me. I experienced non-physical reality. I realize that I'm not writing this alone. It's not possible to create alone because it's impossible to be alone. Every creation is a co-creation. And it wasn't light coming from heaven. It wasn't even thunder. It was just there. It was there. Everywhere. It was there. Non-physical reality. And it's been there for me ever since. That was a part of the answer to the question you asked. And non-physical reality began to be a more and more real occurrence in my life. I wasn't seeing ghosts or angels, but I was finding some things more meaningful than others. And those are the things that I started to follow. So in the course of this, my life became all of those things that you mentioned. Actually, this came after Kansas, where I grew up. It came after Harvard. It came after the Army, where I was a paratrooper. It came after my experiments with treasure hunting. It came after I moved to San Francisco, and while I was in San Francisco, that's when this happened. I was in my mid-30s, and since then, my life has continued to change, and it's gone through huge changes. There are two that are the biggest, by far. One of them was when my beloved Linda Francis entered my life, and another was when her soul returned home to non-physical reality. And through that process and more, I am who I am. Now I realize I always have been who I am and more, but my awareness was very limited compared to what it is now. And what it is now is very limited compared to a non-physical teacher, for example. So all the things that I'm sharing with you and that I reminded you not to take as so because I'm sharing them, all of them have come to me in my experience as this incarnation of Gary Zukav in the Earth Scroll. And it's a tiny, this tiny incarnation. Like, for those of you who are listening, I'm holding my fingers about a quarter of an inch apart. But that's my understanding. And by the way, when you return home, which means when your personality dies, when your soul returns home, you enter the fullness of non-physical reality again. And so you can see for yourself then if what I'm saying is true. But until then, use your sense of meaning. See if you resonate with what I say, and experiment with it if you do. So that began my first glimpse of non-physical reality, probably in my mid-30s, maybe 36, 37. I'll be 83 soon, and it's been continuing to unfold. And it's still continuing to unfold in ways that I find at first impossible to describe. Impossible. I'll give you an example. For example, I discovered that the universe is inside me and there's no outside, that I am a unique expression of the universe, and so are you. So is everyone. At first, I was talking to a non-physical teacher and I said, I can't say that out loud to anyone. It sounds preposterous, even to me. And he said, that's because your awareness has not yet encompassed what it will as you continue to grow. And it did. I have, and it did. For example, here's another example. In the old consciousness, there is an uncrossable, unclimbable barrier between in here and out there. And from that perspective, it's ludicrous to say or think that you can change the world by changing yourself. That barrier is not a part of the new consciousness. In here and out there are not different. That means from that awareness, it is impossible to change the world without changing yourself. There's no difference. In other words, we have become accustomed to experiencing parts and relationships between them. There are no such things as parts, and there never have been. There is one, and all is that. These are things that our new consciousness is moving us toward. And it starts with the realization that I'm more than a body and a mind. You are much more. And as the new consciousness emerges in you and in billions of others, that becomes the defining characteristic of our species. That's how big and unprecedented and epic this transformation is. And to enter it consciously requires the things that I've mentioned. Learning to distinguish between love and fear in yourself, and the difference between what they create when you act with those intentions. Now, I said that twice because it's not what you say or what you do that creates consequences in your life. It's what the intention is behind it. So when I say intention, I'm not talking about, there are multitudes of intentions. I want to go to Paris. I want to have a family. I want to have a motorcycle. I think I have my hair cut. I'm going to start wearing. These are not intentions, you might say. These are outtentions. These are goals. These are physical goals. And intention is a quality of consciousness. And when you act or speak from love or fear, which is the fundamental bedrock, can't get any lower duality in the Earth School, that quality of consciousness infuses your deed and your word. And if that quality of consciousness is fear, that infuses what you say and what you do. That creates consequences, not what you say and not what you do, but the quality of consciousness with which you say it, love or fear. And if that quality of consciousness is love, you create entirely different consequences for yourself. That's the power you have.
When you're getting what I call divine downloads, you're getting information from spirit, or you're getting ideas, concepts, whatever you want to call them. Are you doing something? Are you asking your spirit part of you, your soul part of you? Are you asking spirit guides? What are you doing? And how do those downloads come into your head or come into your being?
Yes. I am divine, but I'm not a computer. I don't get downloaded from a superior server. I don't get access to what other programs have to offer me. I am those programs. But that's a little ways down the line. But it's the same line. I got invited to a conference in Sweden, in Stockholm, shortly after the Dancing Woolly Masters was published. It won the American Book Award for Science, by the way. And so it got this invitation to me. And at that time, I was so depressed, so down, hurting, because I had just broken up with someone, the first woman I had really enjoyed being with. Otherwise, I had sex with women and I didn't care anything about them or care to. And they felt the same about me, but I liked her. And we went on bicycle rides. And when we broke up, looking back on it, because she saw that she didn't want to continue a relationship with a narcissistic person who was addicted to sex, it was crushing to me. So I went to visit someone whom I'd heard speak before. His name was Robert Johnson. He's a Jungian analyst. He's written some wonderful books. He, she, we. So I drove down to see him, and he suggested that I go into the desert because he knew an older woman who allowed him and his students to use their house in the desert when they needed it. And he said, why don't you go into the desert and become enlightened? That's how it's usually done. Robert's very laconic, has no social skills, and is direct. I didn't become enlightened. I don't know what that is, but I had some experiences that were life-changing for me. I learned how to experience my dreams. Then I went home to see my parents because Robert didn't want me back in the house. He said, you can't come back. I've got guests. So I went home to see my parents because I realized I wanted to get to know my dad before he died because I loved him and I always had a really hard time even being with him. Then I realized I can go to Sweden. Before, I could not have even thought of going to Sweden, much less presenting there. But now I was different, and I went. One of my colleagues at this conference, there were 4 of us presenters, was Edgar Mitchell, who was an Apollo 14 astronaut and also was a founder of the Institute of Noetic Science. And I and 2 more were presenters. And when we arrived at the airport in Stockholm, all 4 of us, we were driven to an elegant little hotel in the woods. And the organizer there greeted us, Jan Boström, and he said, welcome, welcome to Sweden. Say, all the major corporations are here, the banks, the telecoms, Volvo, Saab. And then he said, and I have a surprise for you. And he took us into a room. And there was on a riser a middle-aged man named Sture and his son, who was his interpreter. And Sture channeled an entity. He seemed to change. His countenance changed. His face changed. His energy changed. And he said the new person he was said he was a 3,000-year-old Egyptian named Ombris. Well, I didn't have time for this. I was jet-lagged. I just wanted to go to sleep. And I didn't really absorb much. But the next morning, Jan came to me in the lobby again and said, you can speak with Ombris anytime you want. I didn't realize how many people in Sweden were lined up and paying to speak with Ombris. And as shallow as my experience of him had been, I was curious, so I said yes. And he took me back to the room, and there was Sture and his son and me and I, and soon Ombris. And the very first words that Ombris said captured my attention completely and permanently. He said, how did you learn to understand your dreams in the desert? Julie, no one knew I was in the desert. My parents, Robert knew, but he didn't know what happened there. My parents didn't even know about a desert. And Ombris knew what happened in the desert.
Wow.
No, I was listening completely.
He had your attention.
And we talked. And in that meeting, he explained to me, he said, a small flame has been ignited in you, like a candle in a cathedral, and you have to keep it alive. And that was alarming to me. I said, well, can it go out? And he said, yes, you could fall. And I said, well, how do I keep the flame alive? And he said, you must want to speak to people. And I said, Ombris, that's what I can't do. So he leaned forward and he extended both hands. and he took mine in them. And I was surprised at the strength of his grip. He said he was 3,000 years old, and this grip was strong. And he said, "Will you speak with people?" And after a moment of trepidation and fear, I said, "Yes, I will." And he squeezed my hand again, and our conversation was over. And I walked out into the hall. It was just a room in a hall in a hotel. And there was a group of people right in front of the door talking. And they said, "Hello?" And immediately the universe gave me an opportunity, almost a necessity of putting into practice my decision. And I said, "Hi." I spoke with Ambers one more time in Sweden. I wanted to ask him, I said, "Why do you have to speak to me through a translator, through an entity
Mhm.
who speaks through a translator and then speaks to me in English and the reverse when I talk to you? Can't you just talk to me directly?" It was a bit of with an edge on it. And he said, "I can, but could you hear me?" Still touches me
Yeah,
because I knew the answer as soon as I heard the question.
right.
So that was the beginning. It was
Mhm.
years later that another woman with whom I became engaged said, "I channel an entity playfully. Would you like to meet it?" Well, I said yes, because of my experience with Genesis was so substantial and helpful. And that entity has been with me for 40 years.
Does the entity have a name that it calls itself?
That's exactly what I asked my friend. I said, "What is this entity?" And she said, "He says he's an angel." And I said, "Does the angel have a name?"
Yeah.
And she said, "He said, you can call me Genesis." So this is all an answer to your question, Julie, because I want people who are listening to us and you to understand the answer that you ask for. Well, how did all this happen to you? Did it just happen? Was there a catalyst? No, catalyst is a chemical term. This is a spiritual discussion we're having.
Mhm.
It's far beyond what originates in the personality and beyond what originates in the intellect. But we are capable of this, of all of this. It's our evolution now. So I said yes, and I spoke with Genesis, and this time I was listening. But I was surprised again, shocked again, because Genesis said, um, "How can I help you?" Gary, I didn't tell him my name. I don't think he even said it, but I knew he knew my name. I knew he knew about me. So I said, "Well, I have had experiences that are unpleasant, and I have some health issues that come from that." And he said, "Let us move into healing, shall we?" And then, see, what I wanted to ask, I couldn't. I didn't have the courage or the clarity. I wanted to say, "Genesis, I can't stop thinking about sex. I can't stop looking for sex. I can't stop having sex. And I have herpes. Will you please help me?" Genesis answered that question, not the one I asked. He said, "Shall we move into healing?" Or, "Let us move into healing, shall we?" I said, "Yes." And he started to talk. And in the process, he told me, "The issue for you is not sexuality. It is the nature of love." And this was my first complete shock. He'd taken this mundane conversation about a sexual addiction and herpes into a much larger and more comprehensive context. And as we continued to talk, he said, "And for you, the question is not about the nature of love, but about the nature of power." And this was my first half of my first morning of my first day with Genesis. I spoke with him twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon. And I don't know if it's a he or a she. I asked Genesis once, "What are you?" And Genesis said, "I'm an impersonal energy dynamic. You might say that I'm a force of consciousness that has evolved into the ability to support the Earth School and other galaxies and other forms of life." So I cherished every moment with Genesis, but I couldn't speak to Genesis whenever I wanted because my friend, who became my fiance, had other people who wanted to speak with Genesis, and I had to wait my turn. But this went on for 2 years, and then we were breaking up, and it was very painful to me because not only because I didn't wanna lose her, but she was my access to Genesis.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was in the car driving back to the house in the Midwest, her house, when I had a thought came to me, and immediately after that thought came another thought. Genesis said that to me. Genesis put that thought in my mind. I was so excited. I could hardly wait till I could speak again to Genesis, and I said, "Did you put that thought in my mind? Did you say that?" And Genesis said, "I did. Yes." "Can you remember the voice that you heard when you heard that thought?" I had a lot of voices in my head, so I had to sort through them, but I realized I can. Yes, I can. And Genesis said, "Well done. Communication is established. Me, you will not lose." And I haven't. So this will give you an idea of how my journey into the new consciousness began. Writing my first book, which was a book about quantum physics, and then being invited to a conference in Sweden, which I later learned was a conference on choice, and then meeting meeting Ambrose, and then meeting Genesis. And it continues.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? It continues to unfold and gets more fascinating the more you allow it to come in. And I think it's an allowing for for all of us to know that I agree with you that we all have the capability, but it's an allowing for
Yes,
the
that's what we're talking
information.
about. We're talking about the new consciousness. And for those of you who are listening to Julie and me, if you're listening to us, you are multisensory. Otherwise, you'd have tuned out.
Right.
You are experiencing a consciousness unlike any ever experienced before, except by a very few group of humans. And now billions of us are beginning to experience it, and you're one of them. It is a matter of allowing, but it's more than just allowing. Here, take me. Let's go on a trip. It's more than that. It requires commitment. It requires courage. It requires compassion. It requires conscious communication and actions. These, by the way, are the Authentic Power Guidelines. Linda created them. She gave them to me one day. They're brilliant. And I believe you can get them on our website, seatofthesoul.com. If you can't, I'm going to ask that they be put back on. In fact, I'm going to make a note.
What's intuitive intelligence and what's a multisensitive intuitive?
What is multisensory perception? It's a new consciousness. It's more than five sensory perception. The five senses together form a single sensory system, and its object of detection is physical reality. Multisensory humans have more than this single sensory system. They have another sensory system, and that makes them multisensory. So that's shorthand for people who have the new consciousness and relate to what you and I are going to be discussing. Then, what is intuition? What is intuitive intelligence was your question. Intuition is the voice of the non-physical world. It is our connection with wisdom and compassion that is beyond what we can share with one another. It is at the heart of multisensory perception. Now, what is intuitive intelligence? Intelligence is a limited modality. It comes from the intellect. They have the same root source. The words do. The intellect is designed to work with the five senses. It analyzes and deduces. You might say it surveys data that the five senses provide it. And then it compares those data and analyzes them and presents to its personality those things that it feels will be most helpful to its personality in the pursuit of external power, which produces now only violence and destruction. The intellect was not designed to grasp, much less comprehend, or even communicate multisensory experiences. So there will come a time in your life when you will leave your intellect behind. Not that I don't respect the intellect. I've got, by the way, a zip code, an email address, and passwords more than I can handle by myself. But beyond that, the intellect has a limited utility for you. And a new, a replacement for the intellect is emerging, and that is a higher order of logic and understanding that originates in the heart. So these are the things that we'll be discussing. I wouldn't say intuitive intelligence, because intelligence is not, in my experience, what comes from non-physical teachers, from non-physical reality. It's wisdom, it's clarity, it's a sense of compassion, and they're priceless. Being able to use your intuition to speak with a non-physical teacher, that's with a capital T, is priceless. And also, in my experience, not all non-physical teachers are equal. Some of them are treasures. Some of them don't know as much as I know, and some of them know a lot less. So just because someone says, I'm channeling a non-physical teacher, doesn't mean you should accept what they say. Apply what I ask you to do about me. If there's anything you resonate with, experiment with it. But when you have communication in whatever way that's meaningful to you with a real teacher, that's priceless. Listen, experiment, and see how you can bring that into your life, and when you do, what it produces. Because what it will produce is your spiritual development.
Beautifully said. That's one of the many things I love about you, Gary, is you take the complicated and distill it down into understandable languaging that anybody can grasp. And that's certainly one of your superpowers as I perceive it. And that was fabulous. So, what the thing that's coming to my mind is, were we more intuitively based before we became well educated? Were the civilizations of long ago, before people were literate, were they more focused on intuitive abilities? And then as we became more proof-based, we wanted to see proof for everything that came in that was like guidance from spirit? Or was there a catalyst, perhaps, that's causing this new era to emerge that we're witnessing right now?
It's the latter. There have always been multisensory people in our history. Our religions are named after them. They don't always convey what these authentically powerful multisensory individuals conveyed, but they're named after them, and they claim them as their own. And there have been many more. There have been many saints. This has nothing to do with the church, known and unknown. But for the most part, for almost all of the most part, we have been five sensory. Instinct has been important, but that's not the same as intuition. Intuition is access to wisdom and compassion. About a generation and a half ago, a huge change began in human consciousness, and we're midway through it, as I've mentioned. That is the origin of everything that I am sharing with you and with our listeners.
Was there a catalyst to that that caused that? What do you think that was? What precipitated that?
I wouldn't call it a catalyst. I would say that this is a transformation in human consciousness. You might say that the light on our earth was transformed radically and dramatically in a moment that is now affecting us over 3 generations. But that is an event that was planned for thousands of years. Now, this is a misnomer because, in this sense, time exists only in the Earth School. That's the domain that we're in now. It's a domain of time and space and matter and duality. None of those exist beyond the Earth School. Although that's a misnomer too, because there's no beyond, there's no elsewhere. But we're beginning to experience these things now for ourselves. We are standing in a moment of time that is unique. No humans have ever stood here before, with the old consciousness and the new coexisting. It is at its zenith now, and we can use this sharp contrast at its zenith to learn and to grow spiritually. In what way? There are many ways. Creating authentic power is primary among them, and we'll be talking about that, I suspect. Depends on your questions.
Yeah. Let's go into it now. How does one create authentic power? How does one know when they're communicating with spirit versus it's just their ego?
Well, I would say instead of ego, I would use another term, a frightened part of their personality.
Mm.
And I want to go back to this zenith of and the contrast and what it now is calling our attention to. To create authentic power, to align your personality with your soul, is our new evolutionary path. And it requires some simple tools. Emotional awareness. Emotional awareness is awareness of the physical sensations you're feeling in your body in certain areas. When a loving part of your personality is present and when a frightened part of your personality is present. For example, if a frightened part of your personality is present, which means you're angry, you're jealous, you're resentful, you're overwhelmed, you're compulsive or obsessive or competitive. When you put your attention into certain areas in your body, such as your throat area and your chest area and your solar plexus area, you will find physical sensations there, not just feeling heavy, sad, depressed. Those are not physical sensations. Those are poetic labels, and they do you no good in terms of changing your life. You're looking for physical sensations like, because it's a frightened part of your personality, the physical sensations you will experience will be painful or uncomfortable. For example, throbbing, aching, stabbing, stinging, burning, churning, contracting. And when you look at the thoughts that this part of your personality is thinking, they'll always be judgmental or critical, such as, I know all of this. Why am I even here? I know it already. Or, this is way over my head. I don't think I could understand it. I shouldn't be here. Or, she's so stupid. Or, I'm so stupid. This is what frightened parts of your personality are always thinking and feeling. And when you put your attention into these areas of your body, these are your energy processing centers. In the East, these are called chakras. That's a Sanskrit term. And when you feel uncomfortable or painful physical sensations there, you know that you're in a part of your personality that originates in fear. And that's how you know when you are experiencing a loving part of your personality, such as, for example, gratitude, appreciation, caring, contentment, patience, all of the universe. You're in a loving part of your personality. And the thoughts that it's thinking are just those. They're thoughts of gratitude, appreciation, caring, patience, contentment, and awe of the universe. Then you know you're in a loving part of your personality. Now, it's really critical to see this difference in terms of what you create for yourself. Because when you act or speak from a frightened part of your personality, you create consequences that are painful, destructive, unhealthy. And when you speak or act from a loving part of your personality, you create the opposite. You create consequences or experiences for yourself that are healthy, constructive, open. They feel good. So once you can distinguish a frightened part from a loving part, you can do something remarkable, something people have wanted to do for a long time. You can begin to create your life. You can choose the experiences that you want to encounter in your life. Because from a multisensory perspective, your personality is not a single monolithic thing. And sometimes it's depressed, and sometimes it's ebullient, and sometimes it's grateful, and sometimes it's raging. It is like a mandala. It's got many, many different parts, and each of them is experiencing what it encounters in the world differently. And we can put these parts in two different baskets, so to speak. In one basket, let's write fear on the outside: anger, jealousy, resentment, superiority, inferiority, all of those things, and every obsession and compulsion and addiction. All of these come from the fear basket. And on the other basket, let's write love on the outside. All of those experiences come from the love basket. And as you apply emotional awareness, you know, because you hurt and you're thinking critical thoughts, or it is this frightened part, or you feel wonderful and you're thinking loving, content, patient, grateful thoughts. You know, this is the answer to your question. You know whether you're in a frightened part of your personality or a loving part of your personality. And this is what the new consciousness allows us to see and use: the difference between love and fear. You are not judged if you decide to speak from love while a frightened part of your personality is active and demanding that you express it, like anger or jealousy. You simply create different experiences for yourself. And if you choose to act or speak from love while you're experiencing a frightened part of your personality, you're not rewarded. You simply create different experiences. And that's the power you have now. This is the essential learning, the essential teaching in the Earth School. It's a very important place to be. It's not heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. It is the place where souls voluntarily experience, voluntarily incarnate, where portions of souls voluntarily incarnate to learn this lesson that is fundamental in spiritual growth: choice. The extent of your choice, the great creative capacity that you are, and the extent to which you are responsible for how you use it completely. And that's what we're learning here. And what are we learning through our choices? Love. How to love. You can't create love. You can't say, I'm going to be loving. Let me affirm that again. Let me affirm it for the 600th time this month. It won't do you any good. To experience love, you need to find and experience intimately all of the parts of your personality that do not love. It cannot love. That will never love. These are the frightened parts. And move and experience them intimately. That's emotional awareness. And move beyond their control. And as you do, these parts of your personality begin to lose their control over you. And eventually their control over you disintegrates. And that's the creation of authentic power. Each time you are in a frightened part of your personality, you're angry, you're judgmental, you're depressed, you're superior, feeling superior. And in that moment, you choose, you use your volition, your will, to move your attention to a loving part of your personality, to a time when you were loved and loving and you knew it, and choose to speak or act from that part of your personality, the loving part, while you are experiencing the frightened part. That's the moment of creating authentic power. That's the moment when the rubber meets the spiritual road. That's the moment when one of a multitude of possible realities falls into place and becomes your reality. That's the moment when karma is created. That's the moment that you are experimenting with consciously as you create authentic power. It's a huge transformation in human consciousness, where from that perspective we thought the world determines our consciousness. From the new consciousness, we see that what lies behind our eyes has more power than what lies in front of them. We're in new territory. We're in brand new territory, Julie, all of us,
Right.
and it's very exciting
I agree.
and challenging.
Yeah. So let's back up a couple of spaces. First of all, can you give us an example of somebody, let's say mom with a family who has a job, who's trying to make ends meet and and in, improve and increase her spiritual connection and her multisensory perceptions in her everyday life? Can you use that as kind of a general example, or a husband who's at a job that he hates, but he wants to provide for his family and he's trying to get guidance, but he feels so stressed all the time that he doesn't know what to do to, to relieve that, to help him create a life that's going to be more enjoyable for him and his family?
Yes, I can. Create authentic power. Begin the process of becoming aware in your life, of using your multisensory perception. Begin the process of looking inside yourself when you're feeling emotional pain, instead of looking at the world. Five sensory humans, when they feel emotional pain, they look at the world because they believe that the world is the cause of the pain that they feel. And so the only way to relieve themselves of that pain is to change the world. That's the pursuit of external power. That's what produces only violence and destruction. When you feel emotional pain, and it doesn't matter where you are a mother, or whether you are single, or whether you are a grandmother, or whether you are 13, because 12-year-olds and 13s can comprehend these concepts quickly. Look inside you and the internal dynamics that you find. And those internal dynamics are what are creating painful and blissful experiences in you. And we've called those interior dynamics frightened parts of your personality and loving parts of your personality. And when you change them, which is the experience of creating authentic power, you change yourself. Now you begin to have traction. Now you begin to develop mastery in your life. Until then, you're operating without awareness. Something happens in the world. You think it's in the world and you blame them. Your children, for example. One of them says, I hate you. Well, from a 2-year-old, that's one thing. From a 17-year-old, that's really more of a challenge. But what is your experience? It's not coming from the world. The world is activating an internal dynamic in you. And when you try to change the world, those dynamics remain intact and in place to be activated again by the world, and again and again and again. But when you begin to change them, you begin to change. What about the husband who doesn't like his work? I don't give advice. So I'm not going to say, quit your job. What's the issue? There may be 1,000 issues, and most of them will be supplied by fear. What about my children? I've got to support them. I've got responsibilities. If I have a business, people are working for me. I can't lay them off. You can do that, but you won't change yourself. Nothing will change in your life. So the question is, if someone is a mother with a child and a family, what can she do? Create authentic power. Understand that there is a transformation in her consciousness and in the consciousness of humankind that is unprecedented. A new archetype of female and a new archetype of male is now replacing the old, has replaced the old, and she is trying to act under the influence of the old. Let me explain. Let me illustrate that. The old archetype of female is fulfilled by bearing and raising children.
Mhm.
The old archetype of male is fulfilled by providing and protecting them. These archetypes are ancient, as is the archetype of marriage, which was a natural division of labor that enhanced the probability of survival for those in the marriage. All of that is changing. A new female is emerging. The new female is not bound by the expectations of her culture or society or tribe or time or religion. She can do anything she wants. She's limited only by her own aptitudes and abilities. She can become the head of a major corporation. She can be the pilot of a 747. She can be an infantry soldier, as well as a mother, a nanny, and all of those things. She's unstoppable. That's the new female. As he becomes the new male, discovers that he cares for the elderly. He cares for the ill. He cares for the young. He's intuitive. He's sensitive. You can see the new male everywhere. You can see them in the grocery store rolling duplex baby carriages as he shops for the family. You can see them in concourses at every airport as they're walking between gates waiting for planes, and they're tapping a newborn on the butt to burp it. They care. When the new female and the new male look for partners, they're looking for different things than the old male and the old female. So they are looking for partners with whom to share the challenging, demanding, and ineffably rewarding journey of spiritual growth in the Earth School. And in fact, we have a book on that called Spiritual Partnership, which will spell out the dynamics of that dynamic. And spiritual partnership is the archetype that is replacing marriage. The spiritual partnership is a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth, which is creating authentic power. And spiritual partners know that they have souls, and they know that they are together because they have souls, and their togetherness has to do with their souls. They know that they cannot create authentic power for each other, but they can support each other. And that's what they do. For example, a friend will say to a friend who's just been fired from a job, for example, "Oh, I understand. That's difficult, but you're a great guy, and you're going to get another job." Or if he just got a divorce, you're going to say, you're gonna move through this. It's going to be fine. In fact, there's someone in my office who's had her eye on you for some time, and I'll introduce you." That's what friends say to each other. Frightened parts speak to frightened parts. But as spiritual partners say to one another, "Where are you feeling that in your body? Where did what you just say come from? Love or fear? What was your intention when you just spoke?" They say things that will help the spiritual partner become more aware of her interior dynamics and processes. They will help her or him create authentic power rather than struggle to recreate external power, which now is entirely destructive and painful. All of this is part of the new consciousness. You do not need to follow this. You do not need to do anything. You are a chooser. More than that, you are choice. You are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. And that pain in your life is the distance between that reality and your self-perception. And that pain in your life is coming from frightened parts of your personality. And they are precious. They're precious, Julie, when you experience one, because that is the gracious universe's way of bringing your attention to a part of your personality that you must experience intimately and move beyond the control of in order to give the gifts that you were born to give. You can't give the gifts you were born to give while you're in the control of a frightened part of your personality. You can't give those gifts while you're angry or jealous or resentful or in the grip of the addiction of an addictive sexual craving or for food or drugs or for appreciation or for love. And when you encounter a frightened part of your personality and it's activated by something that happens in the physical world, for example, someone says something to you, as you become multisensory and create authentic power, you become able to say to that person, maybe not out loud, but in your heart, "Thank you. Thank you. I need I need this. I've been creating with this part of my personality all my life, and it's so painful, and I never thought about it. But you're right. This part of my personality is jealous. You're right. This part of my personality condemns people. You're right. This part of my personality creates destructively, and it hurts me when I'm in it. This is the Earth School. It's entirely compassionate. It is entirely love. The universe is a universe of love. And every experience that you have in the Earth School serves your spiritual development. Mhm. Its purpose is to bring the awareness of your soul into the consciousness of your personality so that you become one through whom the energy of your soul flows effortlessly like the breath of a musician through a flute. That is the experience of an authentically powerful personality. You cannot tell where she ends and her soul begins. Everyone will create authentic power. Maybe you won't in your lifetime. Eventually you will. No one flunks the Earth School.
I got one last question for you as we're winding down here. Why do we incarnate?
You do not incarnate, your soul incarnates. A portion of your soul incarnates, and you are not its only incarnation. Your soul has numerous incarnations, numerous. And from its perspective, all of them are simultaneous. And your experiences in the Earth School, many of them originate in your lifetime, but there are many more that predate your birthday. You can have a moment of anger or a flash of resentment that could have originated in an experience 300 years ago. You do not know the power and complexity that comes to conclusion in each moment of your interactions in the Earth School. But they are given to you for your spiritual growth. Your soul incarnated in order to experience physicalness and to evolve through the choices of its incarnations, through the free will of its incarnations. No one knows what you will choose in your future. No non-physical teacher knows what you will choose. You, as I mentioned, do not even know what you will choose tomorrow. The Earth School is for the evolution of your soul, and everything in it, every experience in it serves that purpose. That's why you incarnated. You incarnated because your soul chose to. And not all souls that choose are, how to put this, are granted that experience. Your incarnation was not a frivolous thing. Your soul consulted with the universe, with which you have a sacred contract. Every soul that's incarnate does. Every incarnation does. Your soul consulted with its non-physical guides and teachers. It consulted with other souls with whom it might interact. The complexity of this is not a simple thing. It's not that you will incarnate. There is no predetermination. You have no destiny. You're not burdened with that. It is as though, if we could say it, if certain things come to pass in this incarnation, then other things will come to pass, and this soul will come into your life, or that soul. And if these things do not come to pass, others will, and other souls will come into your life. It is a wondrous, not world in which you live in. It is not universe of which you are a part. You are all of these things. You are not apart from the universe. You are it. And so is everyone else. Lakota wisdom, which is part of what Linda and I became adopted into, says the center of the universe is everywhere. I thought about that a lot, but could never really understand it. But I knew where it was pointing. We all do. It's pointing toward you.
Right. Wonderful. Well, on behalf of humanity and me, thank you for having the courage to share all of this with us, because in my mind, after listening to you, I live in the deep South. Down here, they would say, you've been led. You've been led to do this work and to, like you say, present this and let people decide whether it resonates with them or not. And I certainly, after following you for decades, literally probably 35 years, I think I saw you the first time on Oprah 35 years ago. And I thought, whoa, I need to pay attention to this guy. And that was long before I started my journey
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
what I call woo-woo.
Yeah.
Which is woo. My Taoist master friend priest says woo means source in Taoism. And I said,
Woo-woo.
good. That's why I'm like to use the word woo-woo all the time. But I truly appreciate you having the courage to step out there and share this with the world.
Julie, I want to share something else. Courage is not required when you're in a loving part of your personality. Courage is only required when a frightened part of your personality is active in you. That requires courage to say what you know would be best to share, what would be beneficial to share, what you need to share. Love is fearless. Literally, it's not fearless because it's courageous, but because it doesn't remember fear. There is no fear. Love and fear are mutually exclusive. Where there is love, there is no fear. And where there is fear, there is no love.
Mhm.
And you may think that there is a path waiting for you to travel. And when you discover that path, you'll be on it. And then you can go where you want to go. There is no path waiting for you. You create it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yeah, you created it. You were willing to share it as you created it. Yeah.
I allowed, like you said.
Yeah. Beautiful. How can people learn more about you and your work? Please, do you have a website that they can go to and then they can get to your podcast and all of that off of your website?
Seatofthesoul.com. That's SEAT, like what you sit on, of the SOUL.com. It's all there. And also, I invite you to listen to the Gary Zukav podcast. The subtitle is Exploring the New Consciousness. Eventually, you will come to understand that love heals everything, and love is all there is. That's what the podcast is about.
Perfect. And we'll put that in the show notes too. All righty, everybody. Lots for you to think about. In the meantime, I'm sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Oregon, too, where Gary is. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends.